In the vast darkness of space, where civilizations rise and fall like distant stars, there exists a universal truth that every species learns. Humans don't follow the rules. They never have. They never will. When the Caltharian Armada, 300 ships strong, veterans of 1,000 conquered worlds, went completely silent in the Epsilon sector, the Galactic Council assumed it was a communications error. When their backup fleets stopped responding too, panic set in. When the emergency beacons went dark one by one, the galaxy held its breath. Because in 12,000 years of recorded galactic history, nothing had ever made an entire Caltharian fleet simply disappear. Until now. Until the humans decided to remind everyone why Earth's children don't just survive in this hostile universe. They thrive in it. This is the story of what happens when predators meet their apex. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the crystalline chambers of Station Nexus, floating in the neutral zone between the Andorian and vegan systems. Representatives from 47 different species filled the amphitheater, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, telepathic pulses, and harmonic vibrations that the universal translators struggled to process. Council Speaker HFY, a towering Etherian with translucent blue skin that rippled with bioluminescent patterns when agitated, called for order. The patterns on her skin were currently flashing rapidly, a clear sign of distress among her people. Honored delegates, HFY began, her voice carrying the melodic tones characteristic of her species. We face an unprecedented crisis. The Caltharian Armada, all 300 vessels, has vanished without trace in the Epsilon sector. A wave of shocked silence swept through the chamber. The Calthari were known throughout the galaxy as one of the most formidable military forces ever assembled. Their ships were technological marvels, their warriors bred for combat across multiple generations, their tactics refined through centuries of conquest. For them to simply disappear was unthinkable. Ambassador Krextos of the Reptilian Coalition was the first to break the silence. His massive, scaled form shifted in his specialized chair as he spoke. Impossible. The Calthari have conquered over 600 worlds. Their fleet has never suffered a complete loss. What enemy could accomplish such a feat? That's exactly what we need to determine, HFY replied, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to a deeper blue. 3 days ago, Admiral Thakran's fleet was conducting routine patrol exercises in the Epsilon sector. They were scheduled to report in every 6 hours. At 0800 Galactic Standard Time, all communication ceased. She gestured to the holographic display that materialized in the center of the chamber. It showed a three-dimensional map of the Epsilon sector, dotted with red markers indicating the last known positions of the Caltharian vessels. Initial scans showed no debris, no energy signatures, no trace of battle. HFY continued. We dispatched the emergency response fleet under Captain Vorthe K. They too have gone silent. The chamber erupted in concerned chatter across dozens of languages and communication methods. Ambassador Kala of the insectoid swarm clicked rapidly, her compound eyes reflecting the holographic display. If the Calthari are gone, what hope do the rest of us have against this unknown threat? Perhaps, came a deep, rumbling voice from the back of the chamber. We should ask the humans what they know about this. All attention turned to the speaker, General Kozak of the Ursine Federation. The massive, bear-like being stood nearly 3 meters tall, his dark fur marked with scars from countless battles. Unlike most species in the galaxy who had evolved beyond physical conflict, the Ursines still maintained their warrior traditions. The humans, Ambassador Krextos' reptilian features twisted into what might have been confusion. What could those mammals possibly know? They've barely been in space for 2 centuries. Exactly my point, Kozak growled. They're unpredictable. While the rest of us follow established patterns of warfare and diplomacy, humans, they think differently. HFY's patterns shifted to a cautious orange. Are you suggesting the humans are somehow responsible for the disappearance of the Caltharian fleet? I'm suggesting, Kozak replied, settling back into his reinforced chair, that if there's an unknown threat in the galaxy capable of eliminating the Kalthari without a trace, the humans either know what it is, or they are it. The implications of this statement sent ripples of unease through the assembly. Humanity was still considered a minor power by most galactic standards. They had joined the Galactic Council only 50 years ago, after their rather dramatic first contact with the Vegan Trade Federation. The humans had been exploring their local stellar neighborhood when they encountered a vegan exploration vessel. Instead of following established first contact protocols, the human ship had simply hailed them with the message, "Hello there. Mind if we tag along?" Since then, humans had established trade relations, set up colonies, and generally integrated into galactic society with an enthusiasm that many found both amusing and slightly concerning. They were known for their curiosity, their adaptability, and their tendency to find unconventional solutions to problems. But military threats? Most species considered them too young and technologically inferior to pose any real danger. "Perhaps we should contact Ambassador Sarah Chun," suggested Ambassador Veltar of the Aquatic Collective, his gills fluttering as he spoke. The human representative has always been forthcoming in council sessions. Zephi nodded, though her patterns remained agitated. "Contact the human embassy. Request immediate consultation with their military attaches as well. If General Kozak's suspicions have any merit, we need to understand the scope of this situation." As the council moved into emergency session protocols, none of them noticed the subtle smile that crossed Ambassador Chen's lips as she watched the proceedings from the human observation deck. She touched the communications device at her collar and whispered a single word in ancient Mandarin. "Checkmate." Meanwhile, in the depths of space near the Epsilon sector's edge, Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's newest and most closely guarded warship. The vessel hung in the darkness like a predator waiting for prey, its sleek black hull absorbing the light from distant stars. Unlike the ornate, curved designs favored by most galactic civilizations, the Defiance was angular and aggressive, a purpose-built instrument of war. "Status report, Lieutenant Park," Morrison said, not taking his eyes off the tactical display showing the positions of the missing Kaltharian vessels. Lieutenant Sarah Park, the ship's communications officer, looked up from her console. "The Galactic Council has just requested emergency consultation with our embassy, sir. They're asking about our knowledge of the disappearances." Morrison nodded slowly. He was a tall man with graying hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. His uniform bore the insignia of the Terran Defense Force, an organization that officially didn't exist according to most galactic records. "And the Kalthari?" he asked. "Still holding position in the asteroid field, sir. All 300 ships. They haven't moved in 72 hours. Morrison turned to face his tactical officer, Commander Elena Vasquez. "Remind me why we're not proceeding with the original plan?" Vasquez, a compact woman with sharp features and calculating eyes, pulled up another display. "Intelligence suggests Admiral Thakran is planning something beyond a simple patrol. Our sources indicate the Kalthari were using these exercises as cover for reconnaissance of the Terran colonial zone." In other words, Morrison said, his voice carrying a hint of anger, they were planning an invasion. "That's the assessment, sir. The Epsilon sector is the perfect staging ground for an assault on our outer colonies. If they establish a foothold there." Morrison didn't need her to finish. Humanity's expansion into space had been rapid, but resource-intensive. Their colonies were still developing, still vulnerable. An attack by the Kaltharian Armada would be devastating. "Sir," Park interrupted, incoming transmission from Admiral Brooks. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Admiral Rebecca Brooks, head of Terran Defense Command. Her gray hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her expression was as uncompromising as Morrison had ever seen it. "Commander Morrison," she began without preamble, "I trust your mission is proceeding according to plan?" "Yes, ma'am. The Kalthari have taken a bait. They're holding position exactly where our intelligence predicted. Good. The council is getting nervous. They're starting to ask questions about human involvement in the disappearances. Morrison allowed himself a slight smile. Questions are good, Admiral. Questions mean they're thinking. Indeed. But we need to be careful not to overplay our hand. The goal is deterrence, not domination. How long until Phase 2? 18 hours, ma'am. The Kalthari are still trying to figure out what happened to their reconnaissance drones. Once they realize their entire fleet is trapped, they'll either attempt to flee or try to fight their way out. And if they choose to fight, Morrison's expression hardened. Then, they'll discover why humans don't follow the standard rules of galactic warfare. Admiral Brooks nodded approvingly. Proceed with the mission, Commander. And, remember, the galaxy is watching. Show them what happens when someone threatens human civilians. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in contemplative silence. Morrison turned back to the tactical display, studying the positions of the Kaltharian ships. They were arranged in perfect formation, a testament to their military precision and discipline. It was exactly that predictability that would be their downfall. Commander Vasquez, he said, begin Phase 1 of Operation Silent Guardian. Aye, sir. Initiating electromagnetic dampening fields now. Throughout the ship, dozens of technicians worked at consoles, displaying technology that would have amazed most galactic civilizations. Humanity's rapid technological advancement hadn't just been about catching up with other species. It had been about surpassing them in ways they wouldn't expect. While other civilizations focused on energy weapons, shields, and faster-than-light travel, humans had taken a different approach. They studied warfare, tactics, psychology. They understood that battles were won not just with superior firepower, but with superior thinking. The electromagnetic dampening fields were one example of this philosophy. Rather than trying to outgun the Kalthari, the humans had found a way to make their entire fleet effectively disappear from all sensors. To the rest of the galaxy, 300 of the most powerful warships ever built had simply vanished without a trace. Field deployment complete, sir, Vasquez reported. The Kalthari fleet is now invisible to all conventional and quantum sensors. As far as the galaxy is concerned, they no longer exist. Morrison nodded. The first phase had been about making the Kalthari disappear. The second phase would be about making them reappear, along with a very clear message about what happened to those who threaten human worlds. Excellent. Now we wait. As if on cue, the communications console chimed with an incoming message. Park's eyes widened as she read the transmission. Sir, it's from Admiral Thakran. The Kalthari want to negotiate. Morrison's smile was sharp and predatory. Patch them through, Lieutenant. Let's hear what the mighty Kaltharian armada has to say when they realize they're trapped in a cage built by humans. The main screen flickered again, this time revealing the imposing figure of Admiral Thakran. The Kaltharian leader was a massive humanoid with 4 arms, covered in chitinous armor that seemed to be part of his natural biology. His face was angular and severe, with multifaceted eyes that glowed with an inner light. Unknown vessel, Thakran began, his voice a deep rumble that the translation systems rendered in perfect English. Identify yourself. Your interference with Kaltharian military operations constitutes an act of war under galactic law. Morrison stepped forward, making sure he was clearly visible on the transmission. Admiral Thakran, I'm Commander Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Defiance. And you're absolutely right. What we've done could be considered an act of war. Thakran's multifaceted eyes focused on Morrison with predatory intensity. You admit to attacking a Kaltharian fleet? Your species will pay dearly for this transgression, human. Actually, Morrison replied calmly, we haven't attacked anyone. We've simply demonstrated that we could make your entire fleet disappear without firing a single shot. Imagine what we could do if we actually try to hurt you. For the first time since the transmission began, uncertainty flickered across Thakran's alien features. Impossible. No single vessel could neutralize 300 Kaltharian warships. You're absolutely correct, Morrison agreed. No single vessel could accomplish what we've done here, which should tell you something important about human capabilities that you might have overlooked. The implications of Morrison's words hung in the space between the two ships like a weapon waiting to strike. Thakran's eyes narrowed as he processed the meaning behind the human's calm confidence. "You're bluffing," the Caltharian admiral said, but his voice carried less certainty than before. Morrison's smile widened. "In 18 hours, Admiral, your fleet will either be leaving the Epsilon sector permanently, or the Galactic Council will discover that the legendary Caltharian Armada can indeed be destroyed. The choice is yours." With that, Morrison cut the transmission, leaving Admiral Thakran staring at a blank screen and wondering for the first time in his military career if he had finally encountered an enemy he couldn't defeat. The game had begun, and the humans were already 3 moves ahead. Admiral Thakran stood in the command center of his flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds, staring at displays that showed absolutely nothing where his fleet should have been. According to every sensor, scanner, and detection device at his disposal, he was alone in empty space. 300 ships, including his own, had become invisible to their own instruments. "Report," he commanded, his 4 arms moving in agitation as his subordinates scrambled at their stations. "Sir," his tactical officer Vexhai replied, mandibles clicking nervously. "Our sensors show no trace of our own fleet. However, direct visual confirmation shows all ships are still in formation." Thakran's multifaceted eyes reflected the impossible readings on his screens. In his 30 years of military service, he had conquered dozens of worlds, commanded fleets in major galactic conflicts, and never encountered technology that could simply make an entire armada disappear from all detection systems, while leaving them perfectly visible to the naked eye. What about communications with the fleet? "Internal communications are functional, sir. However, all external transmissions beyond a 5-kilometer radius are being completely absorbed or redirected. We are effectively cut off from the galaxy." This was worse than Thakran had initially realized. The humans hadn't just made them invisible. They had isolated them completely. No distress signals could reach Caltharian command. No emergency beacons could alert other fleets to their situation. They had been surgically removed from reality itself. "Sir," another officer called out, "incoming transmission from ship designation KES 247. Captain Rinti reports that his engineering team has detected massive gravitational anomalies surrounding our position." Thakran's blood ran cold. Gravitational anomalies meant only one thing in this context. They were trapped. The humans had somehow created a localized gravity, that prevented faster-than-light travel while maintaining the illusion that they were in normal space. "How many ships do our sensors detect in the immediate vicinity?" he asked, though he already suspected the answer. "1, sir. The human vessel that contacted us. All other readings show empty space." The implications were staggering. A single human ship had neutralized the most powerful military force in the galaxy without firing a shot. But that wasn't the part that terrified Thakran. What terrified him was the casual way the human commander had delivered his ultimatum. There had been no anger, no posturing, no threats of violence. Just calm, professional certainty that the Calthari would either comply or be destroyed. "Admiral," his communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving another transmission from the human vessel." "Put it through." Commander Morrison's face appeared on the main screen, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood several other humans in military uniforms, and Thakran noticed something that made his heart skip a beat. The bridge of the human ship was massive, far too large for a vessel the size of what his sensors detected. "Admiral Thakran," Morrison began, "I trust you've had time to assess your situation. What do you want, human?" Thakran demanded, his natural diplomacy abandoned in favor of directness. "I want to prevent a war that would cost millions of lives," Morrison replied. "Your fleet was conducting reconnaissance for an invasion of human colonial space. We know this. You know this. The question is whether you're willing to discuss this situation rationally." Thakran's warrior instincts rebelled against the idea of negotiating from a position of weakness, but his strategic mind recognized the reality of his situation. Speak your terms. Simple. Your fleet withdraws from this sector and never returns. In exchange, we let you leave with your honor intact and your ships undamaged. And if I refuse? Morrison's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Then you'll discover why humans are the only species in the galaxy that evolved from persistence hunters. The reference meant nothing to Thakran, but the tone conveyed everything he needed to know. This wasn't a bluff. The human commander was absolutely confident in his ability to destroy the Caltharian fleet. You're asking me to believe that one human ship can eliminate 300 Caltharian warships, Thakran said. Such claims require proof. Morrison nodded, as if he had expected this response. Lieutenant Park, show the Admiral our current tactical situation. The screen split, and Thakran found himself looking at a tactical display that shouldn't have been possible. It showed his fleet from an external perspective, all 300 ships visible and perfectly tracked. But, more importantly, it showed that his fleet was completely surrounded. Scattered throughout the asteroid field were dozens of additional signatures, human ships that had been invisible to Caltharian sensors. Not one ship, dozens, each one positioned to deliver devastating crossfire into the tightly packed Caltharian formation. Impressive concealment technology, Morrison commented conversationally. We learned it from studying cuttlefish. Amazing creatures. They can change not just their color, but their apparent texture and even their behavioral patterns to match their environment. Thakran stared at the display in growing horror. The humans hadn't just hidden one ship, they had hidden an entire fleet. His forces were trapped in what could only be described as the most sophisticated military ambush in galactic history. However, Morrison continued, concealment is only one aspect of human military doctrine. Would you like to see some of our other innovations? Before Thakran could respond, the tactical display updated. One of the asteroids near the edge of his formation suddenly moved, not like a ship changing position, but like a living thing stretching and uncoiling. As he watched in fascination and growing dread, the asteroid revealed itself to be something far more dangerous. It was a human ship unlike anything in the galactic databases. Massive, angular, and completely covered in what appeared to be adaptive camouflage that could mimic the appearance and sensor signature of space debris. As it revealed itself, weapons ports opened along its hull like the eyes of some deep-sea predator awakening. The UES Leviathan, Morrison explained, one of our deep space assault platforms, designed specifically for engagements where traditional tactics prove inadequate. Thakran's tactical officer was frantically trying to get readings on a massive vessel. Sir, that ship is nearly twice the size of our largest dreadnought. Energy readings are, sir, their power signature is off the scale. More asteroids began to reveal themselves as hidden human warships. Each one was different in design, but unified in their obvious lethality. Unlike the elegant curves and artistic flourishes that characterized most galactic ship designs, these vessels were purely functional. They existed for one purpose: to destroy their enemies as efficiently as possible. Ow! Thakran asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Humans learn differently than most species, Morrison replied. While the galaxy was developing faster engines and more efficient energy systems, we were studying history. Every war ever fought, every battle ever won or lost. We learned from our own conflicts and from observing others. The display showed more details as each hidden ship revealed itself. Torpedo boats that could accelerate to incredible speeds in short bursts. Electronic warfare ships designed to disrupt enemy communications and targeting systems. Support vessels equipped with advanced medical facilities and engineering capabilities. The thing about persistence hunters, Morrison continued, is that we don't just chase our prey until it collapses from exhaustion. We study it. We learn its patterns, its weaknesses, its escape routes. And then we position ourselves to eliminate all of those advantages. Thakran realized he was looking at the result of a completely different approach to warfare, where the Kalthari relied on superior firepower and aggressive tactics. The humans had created a military philosophy based on patience, preparation, and psychological warfare. Your fleet entered this sector because it represents the perfect staging ground for an attack on our colonies, Morrison said. What you didn't realize is that we've been waiting for you to make exactly this choice for the past 6 months. The tactical display zoomed out further, revealing the full scope of the human preparation. Supply depots hidden throughout the asteroid field. Communication relays disguised as space debris. Sensor networks that could track movement across multiple star systems. This wasn't just an ambush. It was a carefully constructed trap that had been months in the making. You've been watching us, Thakran said, the pieces finally falling into place. We've been watching everyone, Morrison replied. That's what persistence hunters do. We observe, we learn, and we prepare. Did you really think a species that went from ground-based civilization to interstellar travel in less than 2 centuries would do so without developing some advantages? Thakran's communications officer gestured urgently for his attention. When he switched to internal communications, the news was worse than he had feared. Sir, our engineering teams report that the gravitational anomalies aren't natural. They're being generated by massive gravitational manipulation devices positioned throughout the asteroid field. Our jump drives are completely useless. And our weapons? Thakran asked, though he already suspected the answer. Our targeting systems can't lock onto most of the human vessels, sir. Their stealth technology is interfering with our fire control systems. Thakran closed his eyes and considered his options. He could order his fleet to attack, but against an enemy that had prepared this thoroughly, the outcome was inevitable. His ships were trapped, outnumbered, and technologically outmatched. When he opened his eyes, Morrison was still waiting patiently on the screen. You said humans learn from history, Thakran said. What lesson applies to this situation? Morrison's expression became almost sympathetic. Sun Tzu, an ancient human strategist, taught that the supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. We would prefer to resolve this situation without bloodshed, Admiral. And if I agree to withdraw, then your fleet leaves this sector immediately and never returns. Our intelligence networks will monitor Kaltharian military movements to ensure compliance. In exchange, no record of this encounter reaches the Galactic Council, and the Kalthari maintain their reputation as an undefeated military force. The offer was more generous than Thakran had expected. The humans could have used this situation to humiliate the Kalthari publicly, but instead they were offering a face-saving retreat. Why show mercy to an enemy? Thakran asked. Morrison's smile was grim. Because we're not your enemy, Admiral. We're something much worse. We're your evolutionary successors. The galaxy has been peaceful for too long. Species have forgotten how to wage real war. Humans never did. The implication was clear. This display of military superiority wasn't just about protecting human colonies. It was a demonstration that humanity was capable of challenging any military force in the galaxy. The Kalthari were simply the first to test their defenses. I need to consult with my command staff, Thakran said finally. Of course. You have 6 hours before our offer expires. After that, Morrison gestured to the tactical display showing the hidden human fleet. We'll be forced to demonstrate some of our less peaceful innovations. The transmission ended, leaving Thakran alone with the most difficult decision of his career. He could fight and likely face complete annihilation, or he could retreat and face the political consequences of being the first Kaltharian admiral to withdraw without engaging the enemy. As he contemplated his options, his tactical officer approached with a datapad. Sir, we've completed a detailed analysis of the human positions. Based on their ship positions and weapons configurations, our battle computers estimate our survival chances at less than 12%. And that assumes they haven't shown us all their capabilities, Thakran murmured. Sir, Thakran looked around his command center at the officers who had followed him into dozens of battles across the galaxy. They were brave, loyal, and skilled. They deserved better than to die in a trap that he should have seen coming. Prepare a message to all ship commanders. We're leaving this sector. Sir, are we retreating? Thakran's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. We're surviving Vex High. Sometimes that requires more wisdom than courage. As his orders went out to the fleet, Thakran couldn't help but admire the humans' approach to warfare. They had achieved total victory without firing a single shot, demoralized their enemy without inflicting casualties, and demonstrated their military superiority while offering their opponents a dignified retreat. It was, he had to admit, a masterpiece of strategic thinking. What worried him more was the realization that this was probably just the beginning. If humans could do this to the Caltharian Armada, what else were they capable of? And, more importantly, what were their long-term plans for the galaxy? As the fleet prepared to withdraw, Thakran made a mental note to recommend that the Caltharian Empire reconsider its expansion plans, at least until they better understood what humanity was truly capable of. In the depths of space, hidden among the asteroids, Commander Morrison watched the Caltharian fleet prepare for departure and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Phase 2 of Operation Silent Guardian was complete. Now came the hardest part, convincing the Galactic Council that humanity was ready to take its place among the galaxy's major powers, while ensuring they never discovered just how prepared humans were for that transition. The Galactic Council chamber had never seen such tension in its 12,000 years of existence. Emergency sessions had been called before, during the Andromedan invasion, the Plague Wars, the collapse of the First Empire, but never had the assembled representatives looked quite so uncertain about the fundamental nature of their reality. Council Speaker Zephai's bioluminescent patterns had been cycling through stress color for the past hour, as reports continued to filter in from across the galaxy. The Caltharian Armada had reappeared just as suddenly as it had vanished, but now they were broadcasting on all frequencies that they were withdrawing from the Epsilon sector due to strategic reassessment of regional priorities. Admiral Thakran's official report was a masterpiece of military euphemism. His fleet had encountered significant technological challenges that required tactical adjustments to their operational parameters. Reading between the lines, anyone with military experience could see that the legendary Caltharian Armada had retreated without firing a shot. Honored delegates, Zephai announced, her patterns settling into a deep purple that indicated profound concern. We have received Admiral Thakran's official report on the Epsilon sector incident. However, several aspects of this report require clarification. Ambassador Crextios of the Reptilian Coalition leaned forward, his scales rippling with agitation. With respect, Council Speaker, the Admiral's report raises more questions than it answers. What technological challenges could force a retreat of 300 Caltharian warships? Before Zephai could respond, the chamber's main entrance dilated to admit a figure that immediately commanded attention. Ambassador Sarah Chun walked into the chamber with the confident stride of someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. Behind her came 3 individuals in military uniforms that most delegates had never seen before. Honored Council, Chun said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. I believe we can provide some clarification on recent events in the Epsilon sector. The silence that followed was profound. Chen had always been an active participant in council sessions, but she had never interrupted formal proceedings. More concerning was the fact that her military escort bore insignia that weren't in any galactic database. General Kozak of the Ursine Federation was the first to speak. Ambassador Chun, the human delegation wasn't scheduled to address the council today. Chun smiled with the expression of someone holding all the cards in a high-stakes game. Recent events have made it necessary to accelerate certain disclosures. May I present Admiral Rebecca Brooks, Supreme Commander of the Terran Defense Force. A wave of shocked murmurs swept through the chamber. Most delegates had assumed that humanity's military was limited to the small exploration and merchant protection fleets that had been documented over the past 50 years. The idea of a supreme commander suggested a military organization far more extensive than anyone had realized. Admiral Brooks stepped forward, her uniform bearing decorations and insignia that spoke of extensive military experience. She was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that seemed to catalog every potential threat in the room. Honored delegates, Brooks began, I stand before you today to formally announce that humanity is prepared to assume full membership responsibilities in the Galactic Council, including participation in collective defense operations. Ambassador Tala of the insectoid swarm clicked rapidly, her compound eyes reflecting confusion. Admiral Brooks, humanity has been a council member for 50 years. What do you mean by full membership responsibilities? Brooks' smile was carefully neutral. For the past 5 decades, humanity has maintained observer status while we acclimated to galactic society. During this period, we have been conducting a comprehensive assessment of galactic military capabilities, political structures, and potential threats. The implications of this statement sent shock waves through the assembly. Observer status was typically assigned to species that were too primitive or too dangerous to participate fully in galactic affairs. Most delegates had assumed humanity fell into the former category. What kind of assessment? Demanded Ambassador Veltar of the Aquatic Collective. The kind that allows us to make informed decisions about our role in galactic security, Brooks replied. For instance, our analysis indicated that the Caltharian Empire was planning aggressive expansion into human colonial space. We took appropriate defensive measures. Zephai's patterns shifted to an alarmed red. Admiral Brooks, are you saying that humanity was responsible for the Epsilon Sector incident? I'm saying that humanity successfully defended its territory against a potential invasion force, Brooks replied calmly. The Caltharian fleet was conducting reconnaissance in preparation for military action against human colonies. We persuaded them that such action would be inadvisable. The chamber erupted in multiple forms of agitated communication. Ambassador Krextoas stood, his massive reptilian form towering over his colleagues. You're claiming that a single human fleet defeated 300 Caltharian warships? Not defeated, Brooks corrected. Deterred. There's an important difference. Admiral Thakran and his forces are returning to Caltharian space with their ships intact and their honor preserved. However, they now understand that human space is defended by capabilities they cannot overcome. General Kozak's deep voice cut through the chaos. What capabilities? What technology do humans possess that could neutralize the Caltharian armada? Brooks gestured to one of her companions, a man in a uniform marked with the insignia of a technological specialist. May I present Dr. James Wright, Director of Human Technological Development. Dr. Wright was a thin man with the pale complexion of someone who spent most of his time in research facilities. When he spoke, his voice carried the enthusiasm of a scientist discussing his favorite project. Honored delegates, human technological development has followed a somewhat different path than most galactic civilizations. While other species focus primarily on energy efficiency and faster-than-light travel, humans concentrated on what we call asymmetric advantages. He activated a holographic display that showed a comparison between human and typical galactic technologies. For example, while most species developed energy weapons with high output and long range, humans developed projectile weapons with superior accuracy and penetration characteristics. The display showed footage of human weapons testing, kinetic projectiles moving at relativistic speeds, guided by AI systems that could track and target multiple enemies simultaneously. The weapons were crude by galactic standards, but their effectiveness was undeniable. Similarly, Wright continued, while most species focused on stronger shields and armor, humans developed stealth technologies that make detection nearly impossible. The display shifted to show ships appearing and disappearing from sensor scans, demonstrating camouflage systems that could fool even the most advanced detection equipment. Ambassador Tale's clicking became more agitated. These technologies explain how you could hide your forces, but how did you neutralize Caltharian communications and sensors? Wright's smile was almost apologetic. We studied electromagnetic warfare extensively. Most galactic civilizations consider it a primitive form of combat, but primitive doesn't mean ineffective. Our electromagnetic pulse weapons can disable electronic systems across vast areas of space. The implications were staggering. Humanity had developed technologies specifically designed to counter the advanced systems that other civilizations relied upon. It was as if they had deliberately chosen to become the natural predator of galactic technology. But the most significant advantage, Wright concluded, is strategic rather than technological. Humans approach conflict differently than most species. Admiral Brooks stepped forward again. Dr. Wright is correct. Most galactic civilizations approach warfare as an extension of diplomacy, formal, rule-based, with accepted limitations on tactics and targets. Humans approach warfare as evolution in action. The chamber fell silent as delegates tried to process this concept. Evolution, Brooks continued, is not concerned with fairness, honor, or established rules. It rewards only one thing: survival. Human military doctrine reflects this reality. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed tactical analyses of every major galactic conflict over the past millennium. We studied every battle, every campaign, every strategic decision made by every species represented in this chamber. We identified patterns, weaknesses, and exploitable assumptions. Ambassador Krexos's scales rippled with what might have been fear. You've been preparing to fight all of us. We've been preparing to survive in a universe where conflict is inevitable, Brooks replied. The Caltharian Empire represents just one potential threat. Our analysis identified 17 different scenarios where human colonies could face military aggression from galactic powers. Zephai's patterns had shifted to a deep blue that indicated profound shock. 17 scenarios? From whom? Brooks' expression became diplomatically neutral. We prefer not to discuss hypothetical conflicts with current allies. However, I will note that our preparations are purely defensive in nature. General Kozak leaned back in his chair, his bear-like features thoughtful. Defensive preparations that can make an entire fleet disappear and force the withdrawal of the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Exactly, Brooks confirmed. Humans learned long ago that the best defense is to make potential aggressors question whether attacking you is worth the cost. Dr. Wright activated another display showing human population and industrial statistics. What many species don't realize is that human expansion has been far more extensive than our official reports indicated. We currently maintain colonies in over 400 star systems, with a total population exceeding 50 billion individuals. The number sent shock waves through the assembly. Most delegates had assumed humanity controlled perhaps a dozen systems with a few million colonists. Additionally, Wright continued, human industrial capacity has been growing exponentially. Our shipyards are currently producing military vessels at a rate that exceeds the combined output of the 10 largest galactic powers. Ambassador Chun stepped forward, her expression serious. The reason we're revealing this information now is that humanity has reached a decision point. We can no longer maintain our observer status while defending territories that span hundreds of light years. She gestured to the assembled delegates. We're prepared to become full participants in galactic security, including taking responsibility for defending other council member territories against external threats. The offer hung in the chamber like a weapon waiting to be deployed. Humanity was essentially offering to become the galaxy's military protector, a role that would fundamentally alter the balance of power. Zephai's patterns cycled through several colors before settling on a cautious orange. Ambassador Chun, what exactly are you proposing? We're proposing a new security paradigm, Chun replied. One where conflicts are resolved through deterrence rather than destruction. where potential aggressors understand that the cost of expansion exceeds any possible benefit. Admiral Brooks added, "The Caltharian incident demonstrates our capabilities, but it also demonstrates our restraint. We could have destroyed Admiral Thakran's fleet without warning. Instead, we chose to give them a demonstration of their vulnerability and offered them a face-saving withdrawal. Because," Dr. Wright concluded, "our goal isn't domination. It's stability. Humans thrive in peaceful environments where we can explore, trade, and develop new technologies. Military conflict is wasteful and unpredictable." General Kozak spoke into the contemplative silence that followed. "What guarantees do we have that humanity won't use these capabilities for conquest?" Ambassador Chen's smile was genuinely warm. "The same guarantee that has prevented us from conquering Earth's ecosystem despite being its apex predator. Humans are smart enough to understand that destroying our environment would ultimately destroy ourselves." Brooks nodded. "The galaxy is our environment now. We have no interest in ruling over the ashes of conquered civilizations. But we also won't allow anyone to threaten human colonies or our allies." The chamber remained silent as delegates absorbed the magnitude of what they had learned. Humanity hadn't just joined galactic civilization. They had been quietly becoming its dominant military power while maintaining the appearance of primitive newcomers. Ambassador Tala finally spoke, her clicking subdued. "How long have you been planning this revelation?" "Since our first contact with galactic civilization," Chen admitted. "Humans are careful by nature. We prefer to understand our environment before making ourselves vulnerable within it." Zephai's patterns shifted to a color that indicated deep thought. "The Council will need time to consider the implications of your proposal." "Of course," Brooks replied. "But I should mention that our offer has a time limit. Human colonies are expanding rapidly, and our defensive responsibilities are growing accordingly. If the Council chooses not to accept our security partnership, we'll be forced to establish our own defensive alliances." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Humanity was offering to work within the existing galactic order, but they were also prepared to create a new order if necessary. As the emergency session moved into recess, delegates clustered in small groups, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of worried discussion. The humans had fundamentally changed the galactic balance of power in a single afternoon, and everyone was trying to understand what it meant for their own civilizations. In the human observation area, Ambassador Chen watched the chaos with satisfaction. Phase 3 of Operation Silent Guardian was complete. The galaxy now understood that humanity was not a minor power to be overlooked or threatened. More importantly, they understood that humans played by different rules that prioritize survival and effectiveness over tradition and honor. In a universe full of potential threats, that might be exactly what galactic civilization needed. The age of human expansion was beginning, and the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Brooks touched her communication device and spoke quietly. "Control, this is Guardian Actual. The revelation is complete. Begin Phase 4, Integration Protocols." The response came immediately. "Acknowledged, Guardian Actual. Welcome to the big leagues." Brooks smiled as she watched the alien delegates struggle to comprehend their new reality. Humans have been playing the long game for 50 years, and now it was time to collect their winnings. The galaxy had a new apex predator, and it was wearing the flag of Earth.